Sometimes it feels like the sun will never rise, like the birds will never sing again. Believe in a power greater than what you are going through. When you don't know what to do, keep breathing.
That's right. When you don't know what to do, just keep on breathing. From beautiful Los Angeles, California, the city of angels, they say. Sometimes I think it's the city of fallen angels, but normally we would have my co-host Adrienne Gruberg from the Caregiver space representing the Big Apple in New York City, but she's moving. We all know how stressful moving can be, so we're just giving her some grace. And I'm going solo here. And we are coming to you live 24/7 on numerous syndicated radio and podcast networks. Should I say all 26 of them? Okay, I'll try. iHeartRadio, iTunes, YouTube, Spreaker, SoundCloud, Vimeo, Stitcher Radio, Blog Talk Radio, Castbox, Mixcloud, Listen Notes, Blueberry, Player FM, Podcast.com, VIP Internet Radio, TuneIn.com, Facebook Live, Owl's Tale uBook, CaregiverDave.com, Castbox, Twitter, LinkedIn, I never know how to say that one, LinkedIn, FeedSpot, Podbean, and a brand new one, Verbal, spelled VURBL. And in fact, we're proud to be voted #1 caregiver podcast of the top 50 on Player FM, #2 on FeedSpot out of the top 60, and #2 on caringvillage.com. And we have an especially exciting show planned for you today. We have Leshko Evers. I just think she's a great guest, and you're going to hear all about what's going on with her. But before we get started, I want to thank last week's guest, Susanna Stoika. I got to pronounce that right. Author of Healing Your Brain, Reclaiming Your Life, a PhD in computer engineering. She worked on defining advanced technologies and has several U.S. patents. Very smart lady. And just a reminder, you can watch or listen to that interview and all our interviews, including this one on caregiverdave.com or any of our other 26 global networks that I laboriously mentioned a moment ago. All right, enough of that. Leshko Evers, MBA, BSN, RN, all those letters, and has enjoyed 35 years of nursing practice with a focus in emergency nursing, addiction medicine.
Yes.
And when the FDA approved opioids for children ages 11 to 17, she began asking new questions about pain and listening deeply. It's about time. Somebody was doing that. And after years of study, Comfort Quest was born, a transformative, hopeful lens through which pain is viewed as a healing messenger. Now there's a concept, no longer new to me. As a veteran herself, retiring after 32 years from the Coast Guard Reserve. Wow, congratulations. Thank you for your service. Leshko seeks to use this tool program to also help other veterans struggling with pain and partnered with their community to resurrect hope, empower healing, and decrease suicides, which are on the rise.
Yes, they are.
To relax and rebalance her own body, mind, spirit, Leshko enjoys digging in her garden.
Of course.
Fingernails.
That's
repurposing found items and spending quality time with family locally in Florida and New England. Leshko, welcome to the show, and we're so excited to have you on.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me, Dave. This is wonderful.
Pleasure. And I always like to ask my guests, just who is Leshko Evers, and why was she placed on this earth?
That is the question, isn't it? And I think if we ask ourselves that question, we tend to get the right answer. So we have to reconnect to spirit and figure that one out. So I think that I was actually placed on this earth to be brave enough to ask difficult questions when going along with the normal status quo just doesn't seem to be working any longer. And as a nurse for 35 years, as you mentioned, I had hoped to say that at this point in my career that people were feeling so much better and just extremely healthy, and that our body, mind, and spirit were all on track and just doing fabulously well in this country and in the world. But I think even before COVID, we were having some challenges. And so, as you mentioned, that little piece about, children and opioid prescriptions being FDA approved made me really start asking questions because, like many nurses and physicians and anyone in healthcare, I think it's like 75% of the initial complaints when folks come to see their physicians, either in the ED or, primary care, it's rooted in pain. And we have not been doing a great job with healing deeply, especially chronic pain. We do great in the emergency room when someone comes in with a heart attack, and they're having that crushing chest pain. We can give them the morphine, boom, pain is relieved. We give them clot busters and take care of the situation. And I think that's the key. We have to get to what is actually causing the pain. And
pain is your
I'm going to
friend,
suggest
right?
that we're not doing a good job with that yet.
Yeah. It is, it's a new concept. Are you getting a lot of support from the medical community, or are you a lone wolf, like John the Baptist preaching to the desert,
But I don't mind doing that because all it takes is really throwing enough spaghetti on the wall. Eventually something's going to stick, is my theory. So
you are alone, kind of, yes or no?
Yes, it's not. I mean, I've been published as far as with the American Holistic Nurses Association. They saw value in my vision back in August of 2017. And with their support and having it published, at least at that point, I continued on in grad school and did more exploration from a scientific perspective and research with this concept. But it really is very simple. If we continue resisting things, I mean, Carl Jung said that so many years ago, that which we resist persists. And so I started thinking about that, and many years ago in the emergency department, I had a patient, or had many patients. They would come in laughing and talking on the cell phone, eating, and all of that, and I would assess them and ask them, in addition to their regular vital signs and such, okay, are you having any pain? And if so, what is your pain level? And without even giving it a second thought, they would say, oh, it's 10 out of 10. I'm like, 10 out of 10, the worst pain ever that you've ever had? That's what you're experiencing right now? And they're like, oh yeah, it's really, really bad. So what I decided, or what I started to hypothesize, is that we're just fueling the continuation of this process, I want to call it a bit of an epidemic, because obviously it is. We keep using more and more pain meds and not getting a great outcome. And I won't bore you with the statistics because they're all out there, whether it's, how many opioids we're using. And of course, I have no problem with the appropriate use of any and all modalities. And of course, pain medication is fabulously important. But what I'm hoping to share, especially with your audience, is that we need to drill down to authentically and honestly say, how do we feel right now on a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being what we want, the best we've ever felt. And in many cases, especially people who suffer with chronic pain, they've struggled with this issue for so long that they can't even really remember feeling good without being medicated. So
what do you recommend for them, by the way?
Pardon?
What do you recommend for them, by the way?
For them? Well, still, we have to break that cycle. So I invite people to ask that new question. Every morning when you wake up, how great do I feel today? How do I feel if I envision 10 being the best I've ever felt? Now, it's real interesting when you do that, because taking ourselves down memory lane, regardless of when it was, our bodies think we're there. And so our minds release those neurochemicals that put us in that spot. So for example, think about eating a lemon. It's not related to pain, but what happens when you think about eating a lemon? immediately, most of the people, whether you like them or not, your salivary glands start secreting, and it's as though you're eating a lemon. Now, are you really
I
eating
got
a
a
lemon?
better one. Think about scratching a chalkboard.
Oh, yes,
That
exactly.
drives people crazy just thinking about it.
Yes, all of those things. So you can get that physiological hit and experience just by taking yourself to that either positive or negative place. So my thought is we want to envision what we want. And if we envision the positive and being comfortable authentically, that releases good neurochemicals in our bodies. Serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin, all of those sorts of things. That just normally flows in our body. And guess what happens when you do that? Whatever pain you may have been experiencing actually starts to moderate and come down all on its own. And so my thought is, especially for people in a day-to-day experience, how hard is it just to ask a hopeful, positive question instead of reliving that worst pain ever experience? And that's why that's simple.
Well, I used to have chronic pain too, and I know a lot of people who do, where my pain was 10 or 9 or 8.
Yeah,
And for me, I would just hope and pray and wish that it would go down to a 5,
right.
I'm not asking to
But
take it away, just
yeah,
reduce it, to where it's tolerable. And
yes.
that would work also, right?
Yes. And with that, however, what I want to share is that if you're wanting it to go down, you're fighting against it. See what I mean? You're actually saying, okay, body, you're telling me that I'm really uncomfortable. So thanks for sharing, but I really don't want to hear that right now. And my thought,
Kind of the way we react to our mother.
yes, and I've had that experience rather recently. So yeah, that's another whole story. But in any case, when we don't take our body's messages seriously, and pain is our body's way of trying to communicate to us that something needs our attention.
Right.
We put our hand on the stove. If we say, "Oh, ouch, that hurts," but I'm just going to wish that it is a 5 instead of a 10 out of 10. And I'm going to envision it being a 5 instead of a 10, but you don't take your hand off the stove, you're still going to have that pain, right? So I don't really want to make it complicated because it really is, my desire is that we start actually listening again to our bodies. And when it gives us a warning sign, it's not trying to be mean, it's trying to say we're off balance. And it's not just pick a number, but the next question is, after you've picked a number of where you are on that 0 to 10, 10 being the best, do you think it's something really deeply related to your body, your mind, or your spirit that might be out of balance trying to get your attention?
Yeah.
And sometimes people can't immediately articulate the answer to that, but it is one of those 3 things. And sadly, in medicine, over the course of the last at least 25 years, we focus almost exclusively on the body piece. And if we can't figure out how that pain trigger goes to all of these different places and we're going to stop it at some point to make it better, it's like, no, we don't really understand. And they don't. We don't understand chronic pain. And so if we don't understand it, then why don't we just try a different approach to possibly helping moderate it while you're discovering, actually for yourself, what the root cause might be.
Well, that's so true, and I think about it. I didn't even realize it till you said it. But, I'm a caregiver of 25 years, and my wife lost her speech, became paralyzed one side,
Right.
speech impaired. She has to play charades and Pictionary, 2 games I hate, by the way, when she wants to communicate something. And a lot of people look at me from the outside in and say, oh, that poor guy, he lost his
Yeah.
wife and he must be so depressed. But actually, we went through the grief process and went through all of those things, the depression and the anger and all of that stuff, and came to acceptance and say, you know what, it isn't too bad. And it's just a new normal, and I'm happy. I'm happier than I've ever been. My wife's happier than she's ever been in our condition that we are in. And yet we must have done what you have explained, because we should be miserable, right?
Well, by outside
By the world's
standards,
definition.
yes, by the
Yeah.
world's definition, but I would venture to guess that you probably have a strong spiritual connection,
Yep. We do.
whatever that might be.
If
And
we're
I'm
going
going
through
to,
this, there must be a good reason. God's not done with us
yes,
yet. I know a lot
right,
of people. Look at Helen Keller. Look at just, I mean, the
yeah,
list is endless of the people who have disabilities, or they were counted out by the world. They never make
absolutely,
it, and yet there's the superstars.
right. Well, and God doesn't make any junk. So whatever happens, and that's the piece. And I think sadly, we've been pushing God and our spirituality out of our lives over the course of at least my lifetime, the last
Sure.
60 years. Um, and to me, it seems extremely obvious. But even in my nursing practice, it was never anything that was, shall I say, easy to incorporate like seamlessly into our caregiving. So if a person had, a very stressful situation that needed the chaplain or something, then that would be fine. Or we had some nurses who were very comfortable praying with people. But what I was looking for was to try to build a tool that would be useful with a one-stop shop that basically says, let's look at pain/comfort, and then let's drill down without having to get another piece of paper
Mm.
to analyze yet another tool. It's like body, mind, or spirit, and it can change on a daily basis or on a hourly basis, whatever is your biggest concern. So I really want to be able to put all the pieces back together again. And like you were saying with you and your wife, body, mind, and spirit. Yes, your wife's body was impacted by the
Right.
stroke, but her mind, she relearned things, and her spiritual
Yeah.
connection and her connection with you got deeper.
Yeah, and it
And
didn't happen
so,
overnight. There's the
no,
grief process, and it took a couple of
yes,
years. So if you're
right.
going through that, be patient. Let
Yeah,
grief process,
that's it.
uh, grief is not a destination, it's a process. And
Yes.
and
And
so
the same thing with everything else. I mean, life is a process, if you really think
um,
about it. And where, I'm not sure where we got convinced that we needed to be pain-free in this country, but that was not because my first iteration of my pain scale, when I first did it, it was like, yeah, the pain-free scale. And then I started thinking about it. I'm like, that's not it at all. I want people to learn how to feel authentically again, whatever it is that they are feeling, be able to give voice to that. And I think if we can do that, people feel better because they don't feel like they're stuffing down their feelings, which eventually come up like a volcano
yeah.
inappropriately if they're not, addressed.
Yeah, and nobody is really, I mean, nobody is pain-free. If you have no physical pain, I bet you have emotional scars from your
Yes,
past. If
right.
you're good in that area, I bet you are feeling some pain with your finances. I mean, there is
Yeah,
something,
absolutely.
relationships. I mean, the list is endless. There's always some pain
Right.
somewhere in your life. Otherwise, we'd
Well,
be in heaven rejoicing,
yes, or someplace else, I mean, wherever. But that's the
Yes.
key, Dave. You hit it on the nose because when we use our pain scale today, the way it is existing currently, um, the 0 to 10, 10 being the worst pain ever, the goal is to just push it down and to make the patient comfortable. Like you were saying, being a 4 or 5
Right.
was the goal. But are we really getting to the root cause? Because once that pain medication wears off, whatever was going on is still going to be going on. And I'm just offering this as just another way of looking at things, and to then say, oh my goodness, my body's not broken. It's really trying to tell me to focus on something else for a little while.
Uh-huh.
And then, you fix that, or you not even fix it, you deal with it. And whether, like you were saying, it could be a relationship with someone,
Right.
it could be a million and one different things. But the only one who knows that answer is the person you're dealing with, and that's where the listening comes in.
Yeah.
And sadly, we've been told not to really honestly express what we feel. Have you run into that?
Yes.
Not so, I mean, in the media these days, if you really have an idea or a thought that might be outside of the,
Yeah, there's a lot of censorship going on.
you said that, not me.
Yes. So listen, we're going to take a break. We'll be right back. Don't go away. When we get back, we'll talk about the concept of burnout and why it happens, who it happens to, how we can prevent it, and so on, if possible.
We don't have burnout.
We are a community of caregivers that understands and supports you wherever you are in your journey. We are a place to connect with other caregivers, but more importantly, a place to get practical, actionable help. There are lots of ways for you to get support. First of all, you can download our welcome pack. This will get you started on your Thrive journey. Next, you can ask and get answers to your questions by posting them here in our private Facebook groups. You can also get live online support by attending one of our live weekly Connect webinars. You can get practical, actionable advice by listening to our weekly podcast. You can hear and read other stories about other caregivers' experiences. Plus, add your own in our weekly Share Your Story forum, posted every Tuesday in the Facebook group. You can access essential resources and download practical Thrive Solutions packs, all of which are geared to help you thrive as a caregiver. You get lifetime access to all of our resources. Again, we're here to support you and help you thrive and to enjoy your life as a caregiver. And remember, this is a place to get hope, not just cope.
And we're back with our guest, Lisa Leshko Evers. Got 3 names there. She must be
Why
important.
not?
And a bunch of letters after her name. So she's very important. And you're on the
I
Caregiver
love your
Dave Show.
commercial.
I'm Dave Nasani. Thank you. And we are talking about a lot of different things. Pain and acceptance and burnout and all sorts of things. So in my new book, what's the title? Secrets from the Hammock. So many books, so many
Nice.
titles. Uncommon Wisdom for Uncommon Times. I think that's it. We've changed it so
That
many
sounds
times.
good. I'd buy
And
it.
I talk about the 6 areas of wisdom that a person needs to have in their life, and it is uncommon. There's emotional wisdom, there's physical wisdom, there's
Yeah.
financial wisdom, there's relational wisdom, there's mental wisdom, and there's spiritual wisdom. And for a
Nice.
person to be successful in their life, they need all of those. And you need goals for all of those. You
Yeah,
can have,
I agree.
you talk about the millionaire who's set financially, and anyone would envy his position, and he commits suicide. Or
Happens a lot.
yeah, and just figure it out yourself. You can have a bodybuilder, who's not too smart upstairs, in the mental department, and so on. So yeah, we need to be a holy, what's the word? Holistic, right?
It is. It
Take the
is. We
whole
need to
approach
Yeah.
of the mind, body, soul, spirit, etc.
Yes.
And that's
Yes.
sounds like what you're doing, a very balanced approach. So let's talk about burnout. Why
Yes.
do people, especially caregivers, why do they burn
Yes.
out? Because everybody
Well,
does it. And I speak
um,
in this book. I'm trying not to concentrate on caregiving because I'm realizing that the same problems that caregivers have are the same problems that people in general have, and that they just
right.
become accentuated and magnified when they become a caregiver. So if we can deal with their problems before they become a caregiver, it's going to help them when they become a caregiver. So that's my logic in this new book about wisdom, because there's not a lot of wisdom going around, especially when you turn on the radio or listen to our politicians. There's absolutely no wisdom in that. Did I just say that out loud? Okay,
Yes, and I'm going to go ahead and say yes, and I'm going to cheer in your favor.
so let's talk about burnout. How do we avoid
Right.
it? What is it? Why?
Okay. So, as a nurse who has burnt out in the
Hmm.
past, not pleasant, because when I burnt out the first time, I didn't even know that I had burnt out. Um, because
The ugly road of
I
denial, yes.
Well, yes, exactly. Well, I mean, I didn't know what it was at the time until I had gotten to the end, and I was like, oh, and then you go, well, yes, you are been agitated and you can't sleep and you don't want to go to work and you're, but what typically happens, my understanding is that people who burn out are typically those perfectionists, those overachievers who really want things to run smoothly and to run well. And this is how it's going to be. And we
It
will
sounds like a
tend to,
perfectionist also.
yes, definitely, definitely. We will do whatever needs to be done to make it happen. And nurses are notorious that we do that, because with limited resources, limited staffing, whatever, we still have to take care of all of the patients that come into wherever we're working, the ER, telemetry, whatever floor, and we have to do it with a smile and safely and perfect, because if we don't do it right, someone could die. I mean, literally, someone could die. So
Yeah.
the gets back again to being able to honestly feel and articulate what's going on, because instead of stopping long enough to say, wow, there's a problem here, we just keep pushing through. And we're like, oh, we don't have time to think about any of this. We're just going to push, push, push. And then, you finish your shift and you get home and you're totally exhausted, but you can't sleep because your mind's going a mile a minute. And so you have to have a drink perhaps or whatever to get to sleep. And the whole cycle begins the next day. So the key is to realize that, especially as caregivers, as human beings who are in relationship with other human beings, we cannot be our best if we don't take care of ourselves. And that's not being selfish. That's like you're being on the airplane, which I'm sure you've used this analogy before. And when those oxygen masks drop down, you're supposed to put yours on first so that you can breathe and stay healthy so that you can help others. And it's a very simple thing to do, until it isn't, and you're pushed and pushed and pushed. But I've told a lot of my colleagues and that we just have to be all right with saying no on occasion, and not no in a harmful, hateful way, but no, I can't do anything more and I need help with
Yeah.
this. And if we can do that, we are taking care of ourselves. We feel empowered when we do that, and then we can take better care of others when we're feeling like that. But if we just keep sucking it up and pushing through, we become resentful, and it's not a very pleasant experience until then someone says, you're not a very good fit here any longer. And then you go and look for something else to do. Not that anything bad ever happened, but you get to a point after and thank God, because if someone doesn't change your course and you're burnt out, the chances are that you may hurt yourself or someone else.
Yeah.
So we have to be okay to stop and pause, check in with ourselves. And I didn't have Comfort Quest at the time, but the same kind of thing. How do I feel right now? And, no matter if you're pushing through, you're certainly not at your peak experience. You're barely hanging on. And we have to ask ourselves, what is going on in life that we can actually do something about? And I think that's where the listening comes in, We have to be honest. That's, I think, the hardest thing, because we don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, right? I mean, that seems to be some of why we don't say what we'd like to say, because we
Sure.
don't want to hurt someone's feelings.
Let me ask a question. So you talk about being honest and positive,
Mhm.
And how we can process our feelings truthfully and still have hope. But yet, what's the danger of not doing that, of stuffing down our difficult feelings? I mean, it's some kind of a balance. How do we be positive and not deny reality?
That's the key. So let's just think about, and I liken this to, if we have someone come in with a cut on their skin and we just put a Band-Aid on it, and we don't take the time to irrigate the wound and get all that junk out, we can put the Band-Aid on, you can hope for the best, you can give them the antibiotics and the pain meds or whatever, but over a course of a period of time, that wound is going to get infected. If there's anything trapped inside that has not been removed, whether it's physical, emotional, spiritual, whatever trauma, and it gets stuffed down, it becomes an abscess. And under pressure, that abscess is going to pop and explode, and it's typically not a pleasant thing when that happens. And
Doesn't sound pretty.
No, it's not pretty. It's not pretty when a wound does that, and it's especially not pretty when a professional has an explosion in the middle of a busy, medical department. And sadly, that I'm seeing that happen with many caregivers, and looking at some of the articles that have been written recently about nurses are committing suicide more than physicians now, which I just
Really?
read. Which, yes,
Oh, yeah, it's
female
high for
nurses.
caregivers as well.
Yes, it's crazy. So there's no quick and easy answer, but I would like to suggest that if we start being honest with ourselves, take the kid gloves off, get in there, open up the wound, let it all get irrigated with support. You don't just turn somebody loose and say, all right, relive all the trauma that went on in your life and then, puke all over the place. That's not the thing either. We have to do it in a supportive setting. And you can use your resources like you've always used, your psychologists, your psychiatrists, your, any of your spiritual advisors.
Support groups.
Yes, exactly. So, but as we're working through all that, we envision what we want, and we say, okay, it's not great right now, but I know that I've been in a really good place before, and maybe it was when I was 12 years old riding my bike down a hill with no hands, whoosh, fabulous, having the greatest time. I've been there before, I can be there again. So let those good neurochemicals help you feel better naturally, and then you'll get the ability to look at things more objectively. And then you just ask yourself, body, mind, or spirit, what is the top thing that is trying to get your attention? And if we take care of that really annoying thing that we keep pushing down, 9 times out of 10, everything else falls into place as well. And it takes, like you said, it takes a little bit of time.
Yeah.
But again, we have to have a supportive, hopeful process to use, and I think of it as a lighthouse, because of course my background is in the Coast Guard, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I've always loved lighthouses, but
I'm a sailor.
Okay, so you get
familiar
this,
with the Coast Guard.
Yeah, so you get this analogy. So if we don't have a map or an end destination, we're just floating along and could end up anywhere, right? So we have to know where we're headed. So that's where, a positive vision comes in. But then the lighthouse as well tells us when we're when we're in dangerous waters. So there's rocks over here and you want to avoid that. But if you're out to sea and you see nothing, that lighthouse is at least a reminder that you are close to where you want to be,
Yeah.
to stay off the rocks, and just keep trusting and doing the right things to adjust your course towards that and then to your
Hmm.
final destination.
And you've
If
got science on your side, right? I mean, explain what harnessing positive neurochemicals and dopamine and
all
serotonin
that kind of
does
stuff.
for burned out individuals.
Okay, so you probably heard of the serotonin, the SSRIs, the antidepressants. Have you heard
Uh,
about those ones?
Not really, but
Nope. Okay,
I don't get
then we
around
won't go that
much.
way. It's all right. It's all right. So I think that this particular picture, well, and before I go to the little picture, um, what people don't understand, I think, is that our bodies create all of the neurochemicals and the antibodies, all of the fabulous things that we need to stay healthy, okay, and to stay balanced. If we are sluggish and sad and not moving and all of that, then those neurochemicals go wah, wah. There's no reason for anything to really be moving much. So what we need to do, or what happens then if you start with the positive mindset and get up and move and get your body going, get all of that spinning around again, basically your body's neurochemicals are, and you're reliving those positive memories. The happiness, some of the big neurochemical that's released with happiness is serotonin. So when I hear about folks who are told that they need a pill to replace or to fix their serotonin levels being low, I would suggest that as we're doing that, as we're working through this process, we encourage patients to think about when they were the happiest they ever were in life, or when they fell in love. Just going back through those memories increases naturally your dopamine and serotonin and
Yeah.
oxytocin.
The
The
music
best
can be very
emotion,
powerful. I can hear a song that I
check
was
this out. Here we
playing
go.
when I
If you
was
can see
dating in as a teenager,
it.
and all of a sudden I'm there.
Yeah. And
Tell
so,
us what you're showing us there.
okay, so this has been one of my favorite things that I found online a number of years ago. But the happiness, or excuse me, love, is the one emotion that really dumps a lot of all of the healing neurochemicals, serotonin, dopamine, and oxytocin. And so
Hmm.
those, if you take yourself back to when you fell in love with your wife and all of that, all of those neurochemicals are automatically released. Versus if we stay in a place of anxiety and depression, everything is very, very low. And this just 2 seconds. You can see the huge difference. Even if you can't read everything, it's obvious that with anxiety and depression and fear, which we are inundated with 24/7, are we not,
Yeah.
with the
Oh yeah.
news? That drives our good neurochemicals down, and even worse, it jacks up the cortisol, which goes ahead and harms our immune system and our adrenaline, and that makes us all tachycardic and anxious. So we are truly chemical soups, but we have the ability to balance them ourselves as well. The trick is when you take anything from outside of your body and take it in, even like melatonin, like for sleep, because a lot of people will do that. Because melatonin is naturally released by your in your pituitary gland,
Hmm.
you don't want to take it all the time, because if your body already has it circulating in your bloodstream, your brain says, I don't have to release it. So it stops releasing it because it doesn't have to do the work. It's already got the melatonin floating around. Same thing with, we'll take pain and folks who have been on opioids for a long, long time. Their bodies are used to a certain level of opioids floating around. When that happens, our bodies can't release the endorphins like they normally would, which is like our natural morphine, our natural pain medication. So it takes some time. And I think that was brilliant what you said. All of this is a process. So you can't just turn one off and expect the other one to come full gangbusters. It has to be you titrate one down as you exercise and do good things for yourself, and then your natural ones come up. And again, it's not an all or nothing thing. It's just about finding that balance. And I just think it's fascinating to learn how fabulous our bodies are, and with support, what our bodies are capable of doing to take care of us. But we just need to be willing to do our small little part and not mess it up.
Cool. Hey, we're up on another break, so we're going to be right back. Don't go away. Dave Nasani, the Caregiver's Caregiver, has just released his 6th book entitled It's My Life Too, Thrive to Stay Alive as a Caregiver. It was specifically written for caregivers who know they should be putting their needs first, but just don't know how. Dave is the sole caregiver to his wife, Charlene, since 1996. He knows firsthand what caregivers are going through because he is one. He now speaks all across the country, offering caregivers his amazing caregiver support package. Even the airlines tell us that in the event of an emergency, to put your oxygen mask on first before you help your child with their mask. They know that those who don't heed their advice often black out, thus becoming unable to help either themselves or their child. And caregivers are exactly the same way. It's My Life Too, Thrive and Stay Alive as a Caregiver will help caregivers who are neglecting their sleep, diet, and social life and learn to put their needs first. Pick up your copy today or buy one for your special caregiver, on sale everywhere and at caregiverdave.com. And we're back with Lisa Leshko Evers on the Caregiver Dave Show. And,
what fun.
And I am Dave Nasani, and we're talking about a lot of stuff that caregivers need to be listening to. Burnout, pain, dopamine, serotonin. You don't know
It's
what
like
those words
much.
are. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not too much.
Well, but you know what? They're the happy neurochemicals, and they're the ones who basically, they're the neurochemicals in our bodies that help us regulate our mood, our motivation, all of those things. Dopamine more for mood stabilization, dopamine for motivation, and serotonin more for mood stabilization.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, we don't want, artificially adjusting things to what someone else out there thinks our body should be doing. Judging from the suicides and the overdoses and all of those sorts of things, I'd suggest that is not helping us.
Has science figured out, I'm sorry to interrupt, has science figured out how to increase dopamine and serotonin and all those things?
Well, certain foods that you eat will do that.
Yeah, but that's nature. Nature, certainly, that's nature's drugs, right? But has science figured out, when they take an opioid, what does that do to those levels?
Well, what it does is when they take an opioid outside of the body, one that is not being produced naturally, it just tells your body that, I don't have to produce any of my own because the outside is, I'm taking it exogenously. And exogenously means just outside the body. It's like a pill form.
And then when you stop, there's withdrawal, and that's kind of nasty too.
Exactly. Same thing with cortisol, those sorts of things. So have you ever had, cortisol has its place. Have you ever had like an allergic reaction and needed to take steroids or anything?
Yeah.
So if you have a bad allergic reaction, and to save your life, we need to give you steroids to stop that inflammatory process. What you'll find when you go home after you've had the IV stuff to save your life, you'll take what's called a dose pack, and you start with a large amount and you titrate down. So as you're titrating down with the steroid, then your body gets to start taking over and remembering that it needs to make some of it itself. Because if you don't make your natural cortisol, you will die. I mean, a little bit.
So,
It's just
so how do we get it the right way? You said diet.
oh yeah, diet, exercise, sleep, listening, and
All the
again,
things we hate, right?
right. But and that's where I think we've come full circle, and that's where I think COVID has really, I'd like to say, given us a time to stop and reflect a little bit. So if we've taken time to use this break, I guess, effectively and in a meaningful way, many people have realized that they have needed to spend more time with family, but not too much. But they've needed to rest. They've, walking in the garden, taking 20, 30-minute walks with your loved ones and talking to your kids, fabulously important. Those are the things that we had not been doing when we were in the go, 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 more time prior to COVID. So I don't like the whole new normal, but I like the concept of saying less is more, maybe, and that we need to just, like a triage nurse, I'm always prioritizing things. What's the most important thing to do right now? And we have to take care of ourselves, and even our the folks that we need to take care of. If we, that whole, again, without beating a dead horse with the pain thing, but if we can start having our clients, our patients, our loved ones focus on when did you feel the best, and focus on that as the goal. And then we talk about that. And it's so much nicer to relive those beautiful long-term, memories than it is to say, oh, well, what is your pain level right now? And let's give you something for that. Well, yes, you want them to be comfortable, but I would argue that sometimes the thing that would make them most comfortable is having a really meaningful conversation with the caregiver for a period of time. Say that thing that you haven't taken the time to say, good, bad, or otherwise. I mean, both people need to be alert enough and cognizant to have those conversations and to do it in a loving way.
Is
And
that
that's
why
my
you're
goal.
so adamant about saying you need to be listened to? Caregivers need to be
Yes.
listened to. We all need to be listened. I definitely want to be heard by whoever I, want to say something to. But a lot of people aren't listening. They're thinking about how they're going to respond to you, and maybe they're not even paying attention to what you're saying. They're just maybe the first sentence is, oh, I know what I'm going to say back.
Yeah.
So let's talk about listening to each other. And I guess COVID might have taught us that. I don't know.
So, and I think that it starts with, well, listening to one another for sure. But I had a conversation in the car with my mom coming home from a family event, and my goal is I want her to be honest and to tell me what she really thinks about things. And in her mind, she
Let me know
wants
how
to
that
say,
works out for you, by the way.
well, it was interesting. So in her mind, she wants to say the right thing. And I'm like, Mom, I love you. And the right thing is the honest thing, because I can't make a next decision on something that's not accurate.
Or
Because
correct.
then we're all, I mean, it's just like, so if I ask you a question, I'm not trying to be interrogative or, like the waterboarding. You're going to give me the truth, but I want your honest thoughts, not what you think everybody else wants to hear. And I think we need to do that ourselves. And I think all
So
that
you don't
said,
need Jack Nicholson to say, you can't handle the truth.
the truth. Well, we can't, in many cases. So we have, because I think we're so used to the facade of who we are and all of that. And so to honestly come across unfiltered and that's like having this conversation with you today is so much fun, because I think it is sort of unfiltered. It's great. And it's so important to have these discussions.
Aren't we?
Pardon?
We're being honest, aren't we?
We are.
Even
And
before we went on the air, we were honest, so we
at the
can't
end
air
of it
that.
all, everybody, hopefully folks who are listening might get a pearl of wisdom here and there. But it's all about giving ourselves encouragement and permission to be first honest with ourselves, because we can't expect anybody else to be honest unless we're honest with ourselves. And I think that was a good question as far as, why are you on the earth? What are we here to do? And it's not even what we're here to do. It's like, who did God make us out to
Yeah.
be? And if we
And it's
stay
not like
connected
it's
that
not
way,
like, I'm sorry interrupting, man.
no, that's
It's
okay.
not like we have great role models to follow. I mean, the central banks and the people in government, they're
Hmm.
either very, very stupid or very, very dishonest because they're like lying to us. I mean, principles of economics, and
Right.
printing money and borrowing and all the things that was just a given for hundreds of years, all of a
Yeah.
sudden they're like almost they're wink, wink, nod, nod. Yeah, I know what it looks like, but here's what we're saying now.
Yeah.
And
Right.
it's like, oh my gosh, really? You're
And
you're
people are
lying to
buying
us.
it. Yeah, I still don't get the whole Klaus Schwab. You will own nothing and you will be happy. And I'm like, dude, let's start with you. So give us your billions or trillions. You own nothing and we'll be happy. Fabulous. I mean, I'm waiting for them to be
Yeah.
the first
So
folks
basically,
to,
they're saying, now go and do likewise.
yeah,
Go lie to your friends, your family, your
no,
boss, etc.
no. But we have to, again, it gets back to the truth. And we have to be willing to say, do you hear what you're saying? No. 2 plus 2 does not equal 5. I'm not playing Brave New World. I'm not playing 1984. No, no. And there are many other things where people say one thing and it's obviously that's not the truth. And I'm like, the pronoun issue is really confusing. So we have to really just say, and I support everybody through whatever challenge they're going through.
Right.
But is it right for us to go along with what would have 30, 40 years ago been considered delusional
Right.
observations? Nothing's changed.
And only us older people know this. I mean, there are
I
young
know.
people who have never seen a stock market crash because every time there's a correction, the Fed comes in and fixes it. And
Is it?
so, it's taken care of. So they don't have the perspective that older people yet have. Yet
Right.
us older people,
Wisdom.
we're just old-fashioned and we're
Yeah.
closed-minded and you got to think out of the box. And oh my gosh, really?
And it's really strange now because, quite honestly, those of us who are not drinking the Kool-Aid are actually asking those questions that I thought were the questions that were supposed to be asked in the 60s on the college campuses
Yeah.
when, everybody was pushing against the man. And now,
Yeah,
what is
role
really going?
reversal.
Yeah,
All the
it's
people, all
total
the
reversal.
hippies in the 60s were anti-establishment and,
And
freedom of
now that's them.
speech. And
Yeah,
now they're running the country and
yeah,
they just flipped on us. Now,
they
no, no, no,
did.
you can't say that. We're censoring you. We're canceling you. And these are the
Right.
same hippies. So
They exactly right. Exactly right. Um, and so they flipped it on us. So I'm going to flip the pain scale and we're going to go ahead and go with it that way. So we're going to
I
have a
didn't
whole
mean to
new
get
paradigm.
political. Hope we
Yeah, but
don't
the
get
politics
canceled.
is crazy. It is
All right,
crazy
getting
to
back
me.
to the topic at hand.
What was
And
that?
listening. So you have body, mind, spirit challenges, and listening
Yeah,
can help that, right?
absolutely.
Because we're not
Absolutely. And
only listening to other people, we're listening to our bodies. How do you listen to your body? How do you know if your emotions are out of whack? How do you know if your body is out of whack, the physical body? How do you know if
mhm,
your spirit is out of whack?
right.
Give us some
Okay.
tips.
Okay. So again, I like to try to do it in an organized fashion. So it starts
And
with
you
that
only have
first
3 minutes,
question.
by the way. Go ahead.
That's okay. It'll be quick. So the first question is, how do I feel right now? On
Yeah.
that scale, 0 to 10, 10 being the best. Best time, I'm like, okay, so right now I'm about a 5. And the reason I'm a 5 is because I missed a step yesterday and I toppled down with a handful of stuff,
You mean
fell
a
on
real
my rib.
step.
I had a misstep, literally. And my body is what is the problem right now. I know clearly that's what it is. That said, there's also a mind component, because I was reflecting on my mom who fell down that same step previously.
Oh.
So
Get rid of that step.
I know. I'm like, I'm going to have to like put a flashing light on that last step before the landing. But the way I look at this is I have linked the body issues with feeling, like actually feeling the sensations. Mind challenges stem around or the ability to release things that aren't serving us. And then the spirit piece is, I've connected that with forgiveness. And what I found over the course of, my life, basically, is that we do have many things that are not forgiven, and that we hold on to issues. And they could be, even within like whatever church, sorry about that, within our spiritual communities, there's a lot of stuff going on there that many people are not real thrilled with. Or let's say, and I'll take a political stab, race issues. Okay, we need, if we're really going to heal these issues, which are palpable, there needs to be forgiveness, and there needs to be forgiveness on all avenues. We weren't there, but we need to
constant reminders of how evil we are.
Right, and so we just, like physically, on the individual micro level, we've got individual people, but take it to the macro level of societies, it's the same thing. If we keep focusing on the negative, we're just going to keep getting it. Yeah. We can't seem to envision what we want as a country, and that's dangerous.
And it makes sense. I mean, if you have a problem with your adult child, you're not going to keep reminding them about your differences. That's only going to make it worse. You're going to say, hey, let's forget the past. Let's move forward, blah, blah, blah. Right. Well, that's how you heal race issues. Yes, I mean, it's just logical. It's common sense. You do it with your own kids.
Right. Well, and so where did we go off track with the logic? I mean, we're just listening to the craziness, and it's like it makes no sense. Yeah. Get back to philosophy and logic and Aristotle.
Don't confuse me with logic.
Yeah. It's like, crazy. But
all right. Well, we've run the course of our time here. I know an hour goes so fast, doesn't it?
It goes so fast, Dave.
How do we get a hold of you if they want to? You have a book?
Well, the book is, talking about the spirit piece. I'm reworking the second part. So, how to thrive even while healing pain. Reuniting body, mind, and spirit through a hopeful, empowering lens, I think is the title of this
You can't remember your title either, so I
know. So it's like you have to have
it's
those
a great
two
book.
parts.
Sounds a great title.
Yes. So, but
on
in
Amazon,
the meantime,
I'm assuming.
Pardon?
It's on Amazon. They can get it.
Well, it's not to that point yet. It's soon at some point.
Working
2021.
on it. Okay. Soon to be released.
It's soon to be released. But you can reach me on nursesempoweringhealth.com, and I'm updating my website. So, but there is a place where you can go ahead and give me your information, and we can have a chat for 30 minutes and talk about some things. And the actual Comfort Quest vision is there. So we're just planting seeds. I just want people to authentically feel better and know who they are. There you go.
Thank you so much. And Caregiver Dave is how you get a hold of me, and we got some free gifts for you. And we'll see you all next week. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Sometimes it feels like the sun will never rise, like the birds will never sing.